He dragged the dying creature from the fire. By morning it looked human and knew his name. The hull breach screamed as Drake Hollis pulled himself through twisted metal, fire-suppressant foam, slicking his gloves. Smoke churned through the alien vessel's corridors in thick waves his suit's filters couldn't handle. His heads-up display flashed warnings he'd stopped reading 3 bulkheads ago. Somewhere in this dying ship, something was still alive. His thermal scanner had caught the signature before the fire consumed the reactor deck. Faint, fading, but definitely organic. The thermal signature pulsed weakly ahead. He rounded a collapsed bulkhead and froze. The creature sprawled across the deck plating was massive, easily the size of a terrestrial panther, sleek even beneath the burns that marred its silver-blue fur. 4 legs, a long tail, definitely feline. But the eyes that tracked his approach held an intelligence that made his breath catch. Slitted pupils, bright amber, fixed on him with an intensity that felt almost human. "Easy," he said, voice rough through the helmet's speakers. 3rd-degree burns covered most of its left flank. 1 ear had been nearly torn off. Blood, darker than human with a purple tint, pooled beneath its body. It should have been dead already. Drake dropped to his knees beside it. The creature's lips pulled back, revealing sharp canines, but the sound it made wasn't a growl, more like a question. "I'm getting you out of here." He worked his arms beneath its body, feeling the heat even through his suit's insulation. The creature went deliberately limp, despite what had to be agonizing pain. Drake stood, staggering, his suit's exoskeleton kicked in, servos whining. Behind them, something deep in the ship gave way with a groan of tortured metal. "Not today," Drake muttered, breaking into an awkward run. The creature's breathing grew labored against his chest. Its claws flexed involuntarily, catching on his suit but not tearing. Those amber eyes stayed fixed on his faceplate, never blinking. They made it to the breach with seconds to spare. Drake launched himself through the gap into the void, magnetic boots catching his own ship's hull. Behind them, the alien vessel shuddered, fire erupting from new ruptures. His airlock cycled. The moment pressure equalized, Drake was through, laying the creature on his medbay's deck. His hands moved through practiced motions, helmet off, emergency kit, trauma gel for the burns. The creature watched everything he did. No panic, no thrashing, just that unwavering, intelligent stare. "You're going to be fine," he said, spreading gel across the worst burns. "This stuff works on most carbon-based species." He rigged an IV line, guessing at appropriate saline concentrations. The creature didn't pull away when the needle went in. If anything, it seemed to lean into his touch. Hours blurred together. Drake cleaned wounds, applied synthetic skin, monitored vitals on equipment never calibrated for alien physiology. Mostly he worked on instinct and desperation. Somewhere past midnight by ship's clock, exhaustion dragged him down. He slumped in the chair beside the diagnostic bed, watching the creature's chest rise and fall. The breathing had steadied. The burns already looked better than they should have. "What are you?" he whispered. The creature's tail twitched once, its eyes slipped closed. Drake let his own eyes fall shut, just for a moment. Warmth on his face woke him. Not the artificial heat of life support, but something softer. Living. Drake's eyes snapped open. The medbay was empty. The diagnostic bed's restraints hung loose, monitoring leads dangling. His heart lurched as he surged to his feet, hand going to the stunner on his hip. "Looking for me?" The voice came from behind him, low, slightly rough, distinctly female. Drake spun. She stood in the doorway to his cabin, bare feet silent on the deck. His spare shirt hung loose on her frame, hem falling to mid-thigh. But it was everything else that made him forget how to breathe. Silver-white hair spilled past her shoulders in wild waves. Her face held an otherworldly beauty. High cheekbones, full lips, skin with an almost luminescent quality. But the pointed ears rising from that hair, the slight elongation of her canines when she smiled, the slit pupils in those amber eyes, those marked her as something far from human. "Drake Hollis," she said, her pronunciation perfect. "Freelance salvage operator. Born in the Mars colonies, moved to the belt at 19 after your family's transport company folded. You prefer coffee black. You haven't spoken to your sister in 4 years, and you always run 15 degrees too warm in your ships because you hate the cold." Drake's hand tightened on the stunner. "How do you know all that?" "I've been watching you for 3 years." She took a step into the med bay, movements liquid and precise. Predatory. "I know how you take risks that should kill you to save people you've never met. I know you talk to yourself when you think no one's listening. I know you touch your left wrist when you're nervous." Her eyes flicked down to his hand, which had unconsciously moved to do exactly that. "I know you, Drake, better than anyone alive." "That's not an answer." His voice came out steadier than he felt. "What are you?" "Velkari." The word rolled off her tongue like silk over steel. "My people have been observing Earth for the last 53 years, cataloging your species, determining whether humanity deserves to join the galactic community, or—" she paused, something shifting behind her eyes, "or whether you're too dangerous to be allowed to leave your system." The implications hit him like a physical blow, but he pushed them aside. "You were that creature, the one I pulled from the fire." "My true form." She moved closer, close enough that he could see the faint silver undertones in her skin, the way her pupils dilated as she studied him. "We're shapeshifters. It allows us to infiltrate, to observe without being detected. But my ship was sabotaged, and the trauma broke my camouflage protocols. I reverted." Her hand lifted, fingers hovering near the side of her head where the ear had been torn. In this form, both ears were intact. "You shouldn't have come for me." "The ship was marked as a quarantine risk. You could have died." "So could you?" Something flickered across her face, surprise, maybe confusion. We're not supposed to matter to you. You didn't know what I was. For all you knew, I was a dangerous predator." "You were hurt." Drake finally released the stunner, straightening. "That's all that mattered." She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she turned away, shoulders tight beneath his shirt. "My ship didn't crash by accident," she said quietly. "Someone tried to kill me. Another Velkari, I think, though I didn't see them clearly. They're still out there, Drake, and if they know I survived—" She looked back at him over her shoulder, and for the first time he saw something like vulnerability in those alien eyes. "They'll come for me, which means they'll come for you too." Drake's coffee had gone cold in his hand. He set the cup down on the navigation console, never taking his eyes off the woman, Velkari, who'd settled into his chair like she belonged there. "Start from the beginning," he said. "Why would your own people try to kill you?" She was silent for a moment, fingers tracing patterns on the armrest. Her nails were slightly pointed, he noticed. Retractable claws beneath human-seeming fingertips. "The Velkari don't believe in waste," she finally said. "Every observer has a purpose, a mission profile. Mine was Earth, specifically watching individuals who demonstrated pattern recognition and adaptive problem-solving beyond their species' norm." Her eyes lifted to his. "Humans who might represent either your greatest potential or your greatest threat." "And I made the list." Top 15%, something that might have been pride, touched her voice. "The way you see solutions others miss, how you improvise under pressure, it's remarkable. Dangerous, too. That kind of thinking spreads, influences others." Drake crossed his arms, leaning against the console. "You still haven't answered the question." "Because I compromised myself." The words came out sharp. "Observers are supposed to remain detached, clinical, but watching you for 3 years." She stood abruptly, began pacing the narrow space between stations. "You never do what the data suggests you should. 6 months ago, you gave away 2 weeks' worth of salvage to a colony ship whose recyclers had failed. The logical choice was to negotiate, extract maximum value. You just gave it to them." "They had kids on board." "Exactly." She spun to face him. "That's not rational. It's not strategic. It's pure emotion, and it should have made you weaker. But somehow you keep surviving, keep thriving, and I couldn't." Her jaw clenched. "I couldn't maintain proper observation protocols. I started anticipating your choices, understanding them. That's when I knew I'd failed." Drake pushed off the console, closing half the distance between them. She tensed but didn't retreat. "Maybe you didn't fail," he said. "Maybe you just realized we're not as different as you thought." "We're nothing alike." but her voice lacked conviction. Velkari are logical, controlled. We shape ourselves to fit any environment. Your chaos given form, Drake. Beautiful, terrible chaos. The word beautiful hung between them. Color rose in her cheeks, a human response in an alien body. Her pupils expanded when he took another step closer. You never told me your name. Serene. The vowels carried an inflection his human tongue would struggle with. In your language, anyway, the full pronunciation requires vocal structures you don't have. Serene, he repeated, and saw her shoulders relax fractionally at the attempt. The proximity alert killed the moment. Drake jerked his attention to the navigation display as red indicators bloomed across the tactical overlay. Shit, that's them. Serene moved to his side, her hand coming to rest on the console with unconscious ease. They found me faster than I expected. The scanner resolved, a vessel approaching from the dense section of the debris field, drive signature reading hot. Definitely military grade, definitely not broadcasting identification. Can your ship take them? Serene's voice had shifted, gone cold and tactical. In open space, not a chance. Drake's hands flew across the controls, bringing weapons systems online. But this debris field is dense enough to hide a fleet. If I can get us deeper in, we might lose them in the sensor scatter. That's suicide. The collision risk is better than the guaranteed death if they catch us. He glanced at her. Unless you've got a better idea? She stared at the tactical display, something calculating moving behind her eyes. Then she shook her head. Do it. Drake punched the throttle. The ship leaped forward, pressing them both back into their seats. Warning alarms immediately started screaming as they plunged into the thickest part of the debris field. Twisted hulls from a battle decades old, frozen coolant clouds, chunks of rock and ice that could punch through his shields like paper. His hands moved on instinct, weaving between obstacles that appeared too fast for conscious thought. The pursuing vessel followed, more cautious, but still gaining. Weapons lock warnings started painting his HUD. 90 seconds to firing range, Serene said, voice tight. Drake didn't answer, too focused on the impossible three-dimensional puzzle unfolding around them. There, a cluster of derelict ships, tethered together by debris and frozen fuel lines. He angled toward them, cutting thrust at the last possible second. What are you... They slipped into the gap between two hulls with meters to spare on either side. Metal groaned around them, his shield sparking against frozen surfaces. Then they were through, emerging into a pocket of clear space on the far side. Drake immediately killed all non-essential systems, letting the ship go dark and cold. They drifted, just another piece of debris among thousands. They'll scan for our heat signature, Serene whispered. Already venting excess into external heat sinks. We'll read cold within 30 seconds. They waited in silence, watching the tactical display as the pursuit vessel emerged from the cluster. It moved slowly, methodically, sensors sweeping the area. Drake's hand hovered over the weapons controls, knowing it was futile but unwilling to die passive. Serene's hand covered his on the controls. Her skin was cooler than human, textured differently, something between skin and the finest fur. Her fingers laced with his, and he felt her pulse rapid against his palm. The pursuing vessel swept past them, close enough that Drake could make out hull markings if he dared to look out the viewport. Then it continued on, moving deeper into the field. They stayed dark for another 10 minutes before Drake risked bringing systems back online. His hands shook slightly as he plotted a course away from the pursuit, using the densest sections of the field to mask their departure. That was insane, Serene said. Her hand was still in his. You said I was chaos. Drake managed something like a smile. That's what you get. She laughed, short, surprised, and completely genuine. The sound transformed her face, made her seem younger somehow, more vulnerable. When she caught him staring, she didn't look away. Thank you, she said quietly, for not leaving me. You could have, should have, probably. Not how I work. I know. Her thumb traced small circles against his palm. I've been watching, remember? The ship's damaged sensors chose that moment to start complaining, pulling Drake's attention back to the displays. They'd taken some superficial hits threading through the debris field. Nothing critical, but enough to need repairs before they could risk jumping out of the system. "We need to find somewhere to lay low," he said, reluctantly pulling his hand free to work the controls. "Run diagnostics, patch the hull. I've got a supply cache about 6 hours from here, deep enough in the field that scanners can't penetrate. We can hold there while we figure out our next move." 6 hours, Serene nodded slowly. "They'll expand their search pattern, but if we go dark again, they shouldn't find us." Drake set the course and engaged the autopilot. The ship settled into a steady burn, instruments painting the path ahead in soft blues and greens. "Why me?" he asked into the quiet. "You said I was in the top 15%, but that still leaves a lot of other people. Why spend 3 years watching specifically me?" Serene drew her knees up to her chest, arms wrapped around them. The pose made her seem smaller, less alien despite the pointed ears visible through her hair. "Because you reminded me of someone," she admitted. "A Velkari I knew before I became an observer. He used to say our people had forgotten how to feel, that we'd shaped ourselves so often we'd lost whatever we were supposed to be underneath." She rested her chin on her knees. They reassigned him, called his observations contaminated by sentiment. I never saw him again. And watching me was contaminated too. Every day. She looked at him sidelong. "You make me want things I'm not supposed to want, Drake Hollis. That's why they tried to kill me, because somewhere in the last 3 years I stopped being a proper observer and started being—" She trailed off, searching for the word. "Human?" "Compromised." But she smiled when she said it, though maybe those are the same thing. The proximity alert chimed, softer this time, just a navigational warning about debris ahead. Drake adjusted course slightly and they slipped back into comfortable silence. But something had shifted between them, some wall that had existed even in her revelations starting to crumble. His supply cache emerged from the sensor scatter exactly where he'd left it, a hollowed-out section of an old mining station, just big enough for his ship to nestle into. He maneuvered carefully, killing thrust at the last moment to drift into the embrace of twisted metal. "Home sweet home," he muttered, starting the shutdown sequence. "It's perfect." Serene was already unbuckling, moving to examine the airlock controls. Surrounded by enough mass to scatter active scans, no line-of-sight approaches. "How long can we stay?" "Life support's good for a week if we're careful, longer if we ration." Drake secured the systems and stood, joints cracking. "But we'll need to repair the hull damage before we risk moving. Could take 12 hours, maybe more." "Then we have time." She turned to face him fully, and something in her expression made his breath catch. Time to figure out what comes next. Drake met her gaze, saw his own uncertainty reflected in those alien eyes, also something else, something that made heat bloom in his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly, "we have time." Drake woke to the emergency beacon cutting through the quiet like a knife. His hand went to his stunner before his eyes were fully open. Serene was already at the console, her whole body rigid with tension, ears flat against her head. "That's a recall code," she said without looking at him, fingers flying over the controls. "All agents priority. They only use this frequency for fleet-wide mandates." Drake moved to her side, still pulling on his shirt. He watched as she decrypted the transmission, alien script scrolling across the display. Even without understanding a single character, he could see her growing horror in the set of her shoulders, the way her breathing accelerated. "What is it?" "The observation period has ended." Her voice came out hollow, empty of inflection. "The High Council has reviewed humanity's progress over the last 50 years and determined you've advanced too quickly, too aggressively, signs of dangerous expansionist tendencies." She turned to face him, and there was devastation in those amber eyes. "They're implementing the Severance Protocol. They're going to neutralize Earth before you can develop faster-than-light capability." The words didn't make sense at first. Drake's brain refused to process them. Then the full weight crashed down on him. What does neutralize mean? Destroy your orbital infrastructure, collapse your communications networks, eliminate your industrial base. Her hands fisted at her sides hard enough that her nails cut into her palms. Set you back centuries, maybe permanently. They've done it before, Drake. To other species they deem too dangerous. That's genocide. That's survival. But she said it without conviction, like repeating words she no longer believed. From their perspective, prevent one potential threat to save trillions of existing lives. How long do we have? The fleet assembles in 48 hours at the staging expanse, then they jump to your solar system. She was shaking now, subtle tremors running through her frame. Drake, I'm so sorry. My reports, my observations, they contributed to this decision. Can you stop it? She laughed, bitter and broken. I'm one compromised observer. What power do I have against the entire High Council? You have testimony, evidence. Drake grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. You've watched us for 3 years. You know we're not what they think we are. They won't listen. I'm already marked as unreliable. That's why they tried to kill me. I questioned their preliminary conclusions, filed dissenting observations that were too favorable to humanity. Then I'll make them listen. He was already moving to the navigation console, pulling up star charts. Where's the fleet assembling? The staging expanse near the Oort cloud boundary. We could make it in 36 hours if we pushed the engines. She shook her head violently. But they'd destroy us the moment we entered sensor range. My ship's signature is compromised, and yours broadcasts human origin. Not if we use first contact protocols. Drake found the coordinates, started plotting the fastest route. Human vessel requesting dialogue. They can't ignore that without revealing their presence to Earth's detection networks. They'll kill you the second you dock. Maybe. He looked up from the console, met her eyes. But maybe they'll listen. Maybe seeing one human willing to fly into their fleet alone, knowing he's probably going to die, proves we're worth saving. Serene stared at him like he'd suggested flying into the sun for fun. That's completely insane. You keep saying that. I keep doing insane things anyway. He crossed back to her, taking her hands in his. They were cold, trembling. Look, we have exactly 2 options. We sit here and watch Earth die from a distance. Or we try something, even if it's crazy, even if it probably won't work. Her eyes searched his face for a long moment, then something in her expression cracked. If we do this, if we somehow make it to the fleet without being destroyed, she swallowed hard, they'll separate us the moment we board. It's protocol, and I'll be taken into custody for breaking my observation mandate. Then we don't let them separate us. No. He squeezed her hands. You pulled yourself back from death because I was stupid enough to run into a burning ship for you. Now I'm asking you to be stupid with me. She was quiet for a moment. Then slowly she nodded. All right, we go together. We make them listen. She rose on her toes, pressing her forehead to his. But if this goes wrong, if they won't hear us, promise me you'll run. Can't promise that. Drake? He kissed her, cutting off the argument. She made a small sound of surprise, then melted into him. Her hands fisted in his shirt as she kissed him back with desperate intensity. 3 years of watching crystallizing into one moment of contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, her pupils had blown wide enough to almost eclipse the amber. I spent 3 years watching you, she whispered against his mouth, wanting this, knowing I couldn't have it. You have it now. For how long? Her fingers traced his jaw. We have 36 hours until we reach the fleet. Then it's in the hands of beings who've already decided humanity should die. Drake caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm that made her shiver. Then let's not waste the time we have. They came together with the urgency of people racing against extinction. Her alien nature showed through in the way she moved, predatory grace mixed with feline sensuality. When he ran his hands down her spine, she arched into the touch with a sound that was half gasp, half purr, a vibration he could feel through his entire body. Your skin, she murmured against his neck, so warm I could feel it through your suit when you carried me. Drake's answer was lost as she bit down gently on his shoulder, those sharp canines pressing hard enough to mark but not break skin. He groaned, his hands tightening on her hips. She was stronger than her frame suggested, rolling them over and pinning him with a triumphant grin that showed all her teeth. 3 years of watching, she said, leaning down until her mouth was a breath from his. I know everything you like, Drake. Show me. She did, with thoroughness that left him shaking. When he finally gathered enough presence of mind to return the favor, mapping every inch of her alien body with hands and mouth, she lost all her careful control. The sounds she made were nothing like human, higher pitched, more varied, vibrating through her whole frame until he could feel it against his chest. Later, wrapped around each other in sheets that smelled like both of them now, Serene traced invisible patterns on his skin. "I never thought I could have this," she admitted quietly. "My people don't. We're not supposed to want for ourselves. We exist to serve the mission." "What do you want?" "You, simple, direct, this, a future where I don't have to choose between my species and my heart." Drake covered her hand with his, holding it against his chest. "Then come with me to the fleet, testify for humanity, show them what you showed me." He paused, "And whatever happens after, we figure it out together." She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she nodded against his chest. "Together," she agreed. They spent the remaining hours preparing for what might be their last mission. Serene taught him Velkari customs in rapid-fire lessons, how to bow without appearing submissive, how to make eye contact without challenging, the subtle ear positions that communicated respect or defiance. Drake helped her configure his ship's communications array to broadcast first contact protocols, modifying hardware never designed for alien frequencies. The work was intimate in its own way, their bodies moving in sync as they prepared for the impossible. Every brush of contact felt weighted with significance. When the chronometer finally counted down to departure, Drake found Serene standing at the viewport, staring out at the stars scattered across the black. Her reflection in the glass looked small, vulnerable. "Second thoughts?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Third and fourth thoughts." She leaned against him, seeking his warmth. "But I'm still going, even knowing we'll probably die." "Why?" "Because you're right, because humanity deserves a chance." She turned to look up at him, and her eyes held something fierce. "And because I'd rather fight beside you and lose than spend the rest of my life wondering if we could have won." Drake kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her mouth. "Let's go save the world." The Velkari fleet emerged from the void like a promise of annihilation. Hundreds of ships in perfect geometric formation, their hulls reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "That's just the vanguard force," Serene said quietly, her voice tight with barely controlled tension. "The main fleet will be twice that size." Drake kept his hands steady on the controls, guiding his small, battered ship toward the formation. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get as far from this concentrated death as physics would allow. Initiating first contact sequence, Serene said. She triggered the modified communications array they'd spent hours configuring. The signal burst from their ship in harmonics that made Drake's teeth ache and his vision blur slightly at the edges. For 30 seconds that felt like 30 years, nothing happened. Drake watched the tactical display, counting his own heartbeats. Then, simultaneously, every weapon system in the fleet powered down in perfect coordination. "They're granting us approach," Serene breathed, and there was genuine shock in her voice. "I honestly didn't think they would." A response signal came through, carrying instructions Drake couldn't begin to parse. Serene translated, her fingers flying across the console. "We're cleared to dock with the command vessel, the Ascendant Dawn. They'll hear us, but Drake..." She looked at him, and there was naked fear in her eyes. "The moment we board, they'll take me into custody. That part isn't negotiable." We knew that was coming. Knowing and experiencing are different things. Her hand found his, squeezing hard enough to hurt. "Stay focused on the mission. Earth matters more than I do." "Can't promise that either." She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. The docking clamps engaged with a series of solid metallic thuds, pulling them inexorably toward the massive command ship. The airlock cycled. Drake stood, checking his stunner one last time, even though he knew it was completely useless. Serene moved to his side, her body pressed close enough that he could feel her trembling. "Whatever happens," she said quietly, "thank you for seeing me, the real me." "Always." The inner door opened. 6 Velkari warriors in full armor filled the corridor beyond, weapons ready but not yet aimed. They were larger than Serene, more heavily muscled in their natural forms. The lead warrior, darker furred, scarred across the muzzle, stepped forward. "Observer Serene," the warrior said in accented but clear English, "you will come with us. The human will be escorted separately." "I invoke testimony rights," Serene said, and her voice carried an authority Drake hadn't heard before. "As primary observer of Earth for the last 3 years, I have the right to speak before any severance action is implemented." The warrior's ears flicked backward in clear irritation. "Your observations have been noted and dismissed. Your emotional attachment has compromised your judgment." "Then let it be challenged in proper forum," Serene shot back, ears forward now in defiance, "or admit your entire observation protocol is designed to support predetermined outcomes." That landed like a physical blow. The warriors exchanged glances, uncertain. The lead warrior finally touched their communication device, speaking rapidly in their own language. The response made all their ears flatten completely. "The council will see you both," the lead warrior said grudgingly. "Together, but one wrong move, human, and we will end you." They were marched through corridors that seemed to pulse with organic patterns, past crew members who stopped to stare at the human among them. The council chamber was vast, circular, its walls covered in displays showing Earth from orbit. Drake saw his home planet rotating slowly, cities glittering like scattered stars, and felt his chest tighten. 5 figures waited on a raised platform. The one in the center, fur silver with age, eyes cold and measuring, studied Drake with detached interest. "Fascinating," the elder said, their English flawless. "Humanity develops first contact protocols decades before achieving faster-than-light travel. You failed to mention this in your reports, Observer Serene." "Because they didn't have them until yesterday," Serene replied calmly. "Drake Hollis developed them in approximately 18 hours based on cultural extrapolation and pattern recognition." Murmurs from the other council members. The Elder Thessian, tilted their head in what might have been grudging respect. "Interesting but ultimately irrelevant. Observer Serene, your testimony regarding humanity carries no authority due to compromise." "Then test it," Serene said. "Question me about human behavior. I've spent 3 years observing them more closely than any other Valkyrie." "We've read your reports," another council member said, leaning forward. "They grow increasingly biased over time. You've clearly been compromised by prolonged exposure." "I've been educated," Serene countered, her voice rising. "I've learned there's a difference between chaos and creativity. That humans don't think like us, yes, but that makes them valuable, not dangerous." "It makes them unpredictable," Thessian said, voice cutting through the argument. "And unpredictability is the greatest threat to galactic stability. How many wars have been started by species that acted on emotion rather than logic?" They gestured at the displays showing Earth. "Humanity shows all the warning signs. Better to intervene now than allow them to spread chaos across the stars." Every eye in the chamber turned to him. "You've been watching Earth for 50 years. You have the technology to destroy us anytime you want. But you haven't, because you're not certain." Drake took a step forward, ignoring the warriors who tensed. "You're afraid that maybe humanity's chaos isn't a threat. Maybe it's something valuable. And if you're wrong about us, what else might you be wrong about?" "Bold," Thessian said, "based on what evidence?" "Based on you letting me stand here. You could have killed me the moment I requested to dock. But you didn't because you're curious whether Serene's reports have any validity." He glanced at her. "So test us. Give me a challenge. Prove that human thinking is dangerous instead of just assuming it." The council members conferred rapidly. Serene tensed beside him, her hand finding his. Finally, Thessian spoke. "Very well. We will offer you a choice, Drake Hollis, a test of human decision-making." They gestured, and the displays changed, showing his ship in one image, the Ascendant Dawn's engine core in another. "We have placed an explosive device on your vessel. In 60 seconds, it will detonate, destroying your ship and creating a cascade reaction that will damage our engine core. You have 2 options. Evacuate your ship immediately, saving yourself but allowing damage to our vessel. Or stay aboard and attempt to disarm the device, potentially saving both ships but almost certainly dying in the attempt." Drake's blood ran cold. Those aren't real options. That's a forced choice designed to prove your point. They're the only ones you have, Thessian said, voice implacable. Velkari logic is clear. Preserve yourself, but I suspect human emotion will lead you to a different conclusion. You're wrong, Serene said urgently, turning to Drake. Don't. But Drake was already running. His mind raced through possibilities. 60 seconds, maybe less. No time to study Velkari explosives, no way to disarm what he didn't understand. But there was always a third option. He burst into his ship, found the device immediately. 20 seconds. His hands flew across controls, power systems, diagnostics. 15 seconds. A feedback loop. If he overloaded the right capacitors. 10 seconds. The timing was microscopic. The physics were against him. 5 seconds. He triggered the overload. Every system died, the device went dark, countdown frozen. Emergency power kicked in moments later. The device remained dormant, neutralized. Drake slumped against the console, dizzy with adrenaline crash. Serene burst through the airlock and threw herself at him. How did you... Didn't disarm it, killed its power supply. Drake's laugh came out shaky. We have maybe 30 seconds before it reactivates. You created a third option. They returned to the council chamber together. Thessian stood at the platform's edge, expression somewhere between shock and calculation. You disabled your own ship rather than choose between the options we provided. I removed the power source from the equation, Drake said. Neither option you gave me was acceptable, so I made a new one. Silence filled the chamber. You found an optimal solution we didn't anticipate, Thessian said slowly, one that required timing measured in fractions of seconds, executed on pure instinct. That's the value of humanity, Serene said. We showed you the data, you derived the expected conclusions. Drake showed you the unexpected one. More conferring among the council. Finally, Thessian spoke. The fleet will stand down. Humanity is granted a 10-year extension. If at that time your species demonstrates stability to match your creativity, we will reconsider formal contact. They paused. Observer Serene, you will be reassigned. No, Serene said. I choose exile. If you won't let me observe Earth, I won't observe anything else. I'll stay with Drake. The council erupted in protest. Only Thessian remained calm. You would abandon your people for one human. I would choose my own path, Serene said firmly. Isn't that what you fear humans will teach, that there are choices beyond the logical ones? Thessian was quiet for a long moment. Then they inclined their head. So be it. You are released from service, not hunted but not welcomed back. Their expression softened slightly. I hope you find what you're looking for, child. They left the Velkari fleet behind without ceremony, Drake's ship limping away on emergency power. It wasn't until they'd cleared the staging expanse entirely that either of them spoke. We did it, Drake said, hearing the disbelief in his own voice. We actually did it. You did it. Serene turned to face him fully. That solution you found, even I didn't see it coming. I was so focused on the binary choice that I missed the possibility entirely. That's what you're going to teach them over the next 10 years, Drake said, reaching across to take her hand. How to see the third option, the unexpected solution. If they'll listen, she wove their fingers together. 10 years is a long time, Drake, and I'm not one of them anymore. I'm not sure what I am now. You're Serene. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. The woman who chose truth over protocol. That's more than enough. They limped back toward human space over the next 3 days, the ship running on minimal power while Drake jury-rigged repairs with Serene's help. She proved surprisingly adept with human technology once she stopped trying to apply Velkari logic to it. Your systems are so inefficient, she complained at one point, elbow deep in a power conduit. But they work anyway through pure stubbornness. It's infuriating and kind of beautiful. Welcome to being human. She threw a connector at him, but she was smiling. They emerged from FTL at the edge of the Sol system to find themselves immediately bracketed by a dozen human military vessels. Drake's console lit up with demanding hails before he could even begin to explain. Unidentified vessel, this is UEN Vigilance. You are ordered to power down weapons and prepare for boarding. Do not... This is Drake Hollis, independent salvage operator, he interrupted, transmitting his registration codes. I have a passenger aboard who has critical information about an alien species called the Velkari, information that just saved Earth from annihilation by an alien fleet. I strongly suggest you want to hear this. That got their attention. Within hours, they were docked at the orbital station over Earth, shuttled into briefing rooms filled with people whose uniforms carried more stars than Drake had ever seen in one place. Serene handled it all with surprising patience, explaining the Velkari observation period, the near miss with the severance protocol, the extended deadline they'd been granted. She showed them recordings from her observation logs that proved humanity had been watched for half a century without knowing. Why reveal yourselves now? The admiral in charge asked. If your people want to stay hidden for 10 more years. Because I don't want to hide anymore, Serene interrupted, her hand finding Drake's under the table. And because humanity deserves to know they're not alone in the universe. You have 10 years to prepare for formal contact. I suggest you use them wisely. The debriefings lasted for weeks. Drake and Serene were kept in comfortable quarters, treated well, but also clearly not free to leave until the authorities were satisfied they'd extracted every piece of useful information. Drake didn't mind. The quarters had a real bed that didn't squeak, hot showers with actual pressure, and food that didn't come from ration packs. And Serene was there, learning to be human with an intensity that was both endearing and slightly terrifying. Why do you eat breakfast foods only at breakfast? She demanded one morning, staring at the plate he'd ordered. The nutritional value doesn't change based on time of day. It's arbitrary. It's tradition. It's illogical. Welcome to... Don't say it. But she was smiling as she stole a piece of his bacon. They were released after a month with new credentials that identified Serene as humanity's first official alien contact and Drake as Earth's accidental ambassador. The titles came with job offers, security clearances, and enough attention to make Drake's quiet salvage life thoroughly over. We could disappear, he suggested one night, lying beside her in the darkness. Take my ship, head to the outer colonies, start over somewhere nobody knows who we are. Serene traced patterns on his chest, her touch familiar now. Is that what you want? I want you to have a choice. You gave up everything for me. I gave up nothing. She propped herself up on one elbow, eyes gleaming in the dim light. I chose you over service to people who wanted me to be less than I am. That's not sacrifice, Drake. That's freedom. Still, he caught her hand, held it against his heart. 10 years is a long time, are you sure? She kissed him, slow and thorough. I'm sure, she said when they broke apart. I've spent 3 years watching you live from a distance. I want the rest of your life experiencing it with you. The rest of my life, Drake smiled. That's a long commitment. Good thing Velkari live longer then. She kissed him again. I'll need the extra time to teach you to pronounce my name correctly. I'm trying. I know. Her hand cupped his face, thumb tracing his cheekbone. But you still get the cadence wrong on the third syllable. Show me again. She did, the sounds carrying harmonics his human vocal cords couldn't quite reproduce. He tried anyway, making her laugh at his attempts. Close enough, she finally conceded, for a human. They eventually left Earth for the colonies, not running but choosing their own path. Drake kept his salvage license, though the jobs he took now came with official backing and actual support infrastructure. Serene worked as a consultant for the newly formed Office of Extraterrestrial Contact, helping humanity prepare for the day formal relations with the Velkari would begin. Years passed in a blur of travel and work and quiet moments between the chaos. They explored the edges of human space together, finding peace in the spaces between stars. Serene's alien features became familiar to the humans who met her, her presence a constant reminder that Earth wasn't alone in the vast universe. The 10-year deadline approached slowly, then suddenly all at once with the acceleration that characterized all important moments. Messages came from the Velkari, formal notifications that the observation period would end on schedule. Humanity held its breath, prepared for either acceptance or another reprieve. Drake Hollis, Serene, the High Council requests your presence. They went together, as they'd done everything since that first night in the med bay. The council chamber looked the same, but Elder Thessian had more silver in their fur, and the other members' expressions were different than before. Less hostile. More genuinely curious. 10 years, Thessian said without preamble. Humanity has progressed exactly as unpredictably as we feared. You've had 3 wars, 2 near economic collapses, and 1 incident where you almost destroyed your own moon in a mining accident. The elder paused, and something that might have been amusement touched their voice. You've also established 2 new colony worlds that are thriving, developed revolutionary medical technology that you immediately shared freely, and produced art that makes even Valkyrie question our assumptions about creativity. So what's the verdict? Drake asked, keeping his voice steady. The observation period is ended. Humanity is accepted for formal contact with the galactic community. Thessian looked directly at Serene. Your testimony proved accurate, Exile. Humans are chaos, but they're also creative, adaptive, and surprisingly resilient in ways we didn't anticipate. The galaxy needs that kind of thinking, whether it makes us comfortable or not. The transmission ended. Drake and Serene stared at the view screen showing Earth in all its blue-green glory, beautiful and fragile and now accepted. We did it, Serene whispered. Together, Drake said, pulling her into his arms. In the months that followed, Earth's first formal contact with the Valkyrie unfolded slowly and carefully. Valkyrie observers, real ones this time, operating openly, visited human worlds. Cultural exchanges began tentatively. Humanity's chaos started spreading into the careful order of galactic civilization, making waves, changing established patterns in ways no one could have predicted. Through it all, Drake and Serene remained constants for each other. He taught her that not everything required logic, that sometimes the best solutions came from feeling rather than thinking. She taught him that chaos worked best with at least some structure, that his instincts were sharper when balanced with her perspective. On their 5th anniversary, measured in Earth years because Valkyrie didn't celebrate such arbitrary milestones, Drake finally mastered the pronunciation of her full name. The sounds still didn't quite match what a Valkyrie throat could produce naturally, but close enough that her eyes shone with pleasure when she heard it. Perfect, she said, voice thick with emotion. Took me long enough. Some things are worth the wait. She curled against him, her alien warmth familiar now, comforting. Home. Drake? Yeah? Thank you for pulling me from the fire. He kissed the top of her head, right between her ears. Thank you for knowing my name. Outside their ship, the galaxy spun on, human chaos mixing with alien order, creating something new and unexpected. Something that only existed because a salvage pilot once chose to risk everything for a dying creature, and that creature chose to become more than what she'd been programmed to be. The stars watched and waited to see what would happen next.